few responses. You will remain muted for this webinar. This webinar will also be recorded and will be available on the Oregon Educators Network's Comprehensive Sexuality Education site. Resources and links will be sent to participants after the webinar as well. If this webinar also gives you an itch to begin further conversations with your colleagues across the state, please visit the discussion forum page on the OEN Comprehensive Sexuality Education site. We can all continue the conversations there. Additionally, if you would like PDUs for this webinar, please reach out to me and I can provide that information for you. So, this first webinar in the series will be about Oregon's policy framework, including applicable Oregon laws as well as the Oregon Department of Education's new health standards. We will go through the Oregon Revised Statutes, also known as ORSs, and Oregon Administrative Rules, OARs, that form the backdrop for sexuality education and health education in the state. Today may be the most dense and maybe dry out of the webinar series, so please join us again next month on the last Friday of the month where we will discuss parent engagement in sex ed. So we'll start by introducing ourselves. My name is Sasha Grenier and I'm the Sexuality Education and School Health Specialist at the Oregon Department of Education. One of my roles here at ODE is to support school districts in implementing effective sexuality education and promoting health and safety among students across the state. My background is in both public health and education, which we know and we'll talk about more about today, go hand in hand in supporting the whole child. To talk more about this today, our guest presenter on the first webinar of the series is Suzanne Hitty, who is the Health and PE Specialist at the Oregon Department of Education. Go ahead, Suzanne. Do you want to introduce yourself to the webinar?
Hi, everyone. This is Suzanne Hitty, Health and Physical Education Specialist here at the Oregon Department of Education. I'm extremely excited to be a part of this webinar series, and I hope to inform you more about the health education standards. Later on, maybe we can address some of the physical education standards. So thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so let's get started. Oh, there's us. I mistimed that slide change. Oh, well. There's a picture of us. We're both doing nature things. What we love to do in Oregon is travel and hike. So that's a picture of both of us and our family. All right, so let's get started with a teeny tiny little overview of sex ed. So what is sex ed exactly? Oregon uses a comprehensive approach in teaching sexuality. It is considered to be abstinence-based, which means that we emphasize abstinence, but not to the exclusion of contraceptive methods, consent, and medically accurate information around STIs, including symptoms and management. Comprehensive sexuality education is a curriculum-based process of teaching and learning about the emotional, physical, and social aspects of human sexuality and healthy relationships. It aims to equip children and young people with the knowledge and skills that will empower them to realize their health, well-being, and dignity, develop respectful social and sexual relationships, consider how their choices affect their own well-being and that of others, and to understand and ensure the protection of their rights throughout their lives. It's important to note that all of this is done in an age-appropriate way that focuses on social-emotional skills and parental engagement, and not on the mechanics or techniques of sexual interactions. So just real quick, I'm a research person, so tying that into the research, we did say we're evidence-based. So there is substantial evidence that shows that comprehensive sexuality education actually does delay sexual initiation among adolescents, decreases rates of unintended pregnancies and STIs, and promising evidence shows that it prevents sexual violence perpetration as well. So these next two slides are just a compilation of some of the most recent evidence that shows this. So this slide that I'm showing here has been reaffirmed based on many research studies that the abstinence only until marriage approach can actually cause more harm, leaving young people really inequipped to make some of the decisions and pursue some of the health care that they need. This next slide is also research real quick, just showing more evidence that sexuality education and its positive effects, And then the bottom quote there has to do with all the leading public health and medical professional organizations that support comprehensive sex education. So this is just to say that we are following the most recent evidence and the most recent and up-to-date research in the field in developing all of the laws and the Oregon health standards that we're going to talk about later. So I'm going to show a quick little video of what a health educator has to say in talking about what this looks like in its implementation. All right, we're having a sound problem. Okay, it's okay. We'll send it out later. All right, that's okay. We will send that out later to all of you. We prepared that so diligently, and it didn't come through this time, but that's okay. Basically, that video showed a health educator talking about how really we play a part of this puzzle of preparing young people to make the right sexual health decisions for them that keep them the healthiest and happiest they can be is really a role or really a partnership in between parents and educators, and that we are not saying that parents are not involved. In fact, we acknowledge that they are the primary providers of sexual health education in terms of values and empathy and those sorts of skills, and that educators play a great supplemental role throughout childhood as well as adolescence, and that this throughout life, starting in an early age, builds the skills of compassion, empathy, social interaction, communication that are essential to build healthy relationships throughout life. So I will send you all that great little short video later, as I really do think it's a great second perspective from than just us sitting in this room right now. So the law in Oregon, like I said, reflects much of this research that I've gone through, and it's composed of two major pieces. So looking at the law in Oregon and how it's structured, Oregon revised statutes are laws that have already been passed by the legislature. The exact same version of a bill must be passed by the Oregon Senate and House and then signed into law by the governor. Oregon revised statutes are created by Oregon administrative rules are then created by most agencies and some boards and commissions to implement and interpret their statutory authority. I say that just to understand that when I'm going through the different statutes and rules, that these are part and parcel of the law in Oregon. What we say is the law. They both add up to Oregon law, but they are specifically created by either the legislature or different agencies. So we'll be going through both of those today, and I'll be referring back to either ORSs or OARs for the rest of the webinar. So each school district, I'm going to need to remove this. ORS 336.455 means that it's an Oregon revised statute found in Chapter 336, which outlines the conduct of schools generally. It says that each school district shall provide age-appropriate human sexuality education courses in all public elementary and secondary schools as an integral part of the health education curriculum. So you see here that it's part of the health education curriculum and that we use this word sexuality. And I ask you all to think about this word sexuality. What does it mean exactly? I would like to say and posit the fact that sexuality includes much more than just the three first letters, sex. In fact, I would like to say that there is very little actually about this that has to do with those three first words. Sexuality encompasses relationships with others, ourselves, our bodies, and our growth and development. It is about how we express ourselves and how we stay safe. When we talk about sexuality, don't hear just those first letters, sex. hear us talking about healthy relationships and respect, values and boundaries, health and safety. Think about all the things that mean healthy sexuality and well-being to you. And that's what we're referring to throughout this webinar. So what else does the law say? It says, these are all quotes directly from the law, that course material and instruction shall enhance students' understanding of sexuality as a normal and healthy aspect of human development. Course instruction shall be appropriate for the age of the students and satisfy the following criteria: be medically accurate and be comprehensive. So again, this word sexuality is included as a normal and healthy aspect of human development. We know that all ages experience some sort of sexuality, and that's changing throughout life, and that's part of the education that we argue is essential for well-being. So what do these two last terms mean? Medically accurate and comprehensive. So comprehensive means complete, medically accurate, and age appropriate. It means that it's abstinence-based, but it also prepares students for the reality that most adults will have sexual relationships in their lives and what that sort of responsibility and risks look like. What does medically accurate mean? It means that we use information that is established through the use of the scientific method. Results can be measured, quantified, and replicated to confirm accuracy and are reported or recognized in peer-reviewed journals or other authoritative publications. So what else is in the statute? It says that we shall promote abstinence for school-age youth and mutually monogamous relationships when an uninfected partner is the safest and most responsible sexual behavior to prevent pregnancy and the transmission of sexually transmitted diseases, but that it shall not be taught to the exclusion of other material and instruction on contraceptive and disease reduction measures. It says that human sexuality education courses shall acknowledge that abstinence or acknowledge the value of abstinence while not devaluing or ignoring those young people who have had or are having sexual intercourse. We know that that's a reality in the schools where we work, or according to the Oregon Healthy Teens Survey, about 8% of 8th graders have reported having engaged in sexual intercourse, and about 40 or nearly 50% of 11th graders have as well. And those are the latest numbers from the Oregon Health Authority. So teaching to that reality, we also say, the law also says that no form of sexual expression is acceptable and that no action that physically or emotionally harms oneself or others is acceptable. This is another kind of violence and bullying prevention measure that has been integrated into both statute and rule. It says that teaching pupils not to make unwanted physical and verbal sexual advances, how to decline unwanted sexual advances, or accept the refusal of unwanted sexual advances. These are all basic consent skills that also work towards violence prevention. The law says that materials and information shall be presented in a manner sensitive to the fact that there are students who have experienced sexual abuse. We also know the rates of sexual abuse are quite high in Oregon. Approximately 1 out of 6 students before they turn 18 will experience some sexual abuse. So the reality is that in every classroom we teach, there is someone who's experienced sexual abuse, and to keep that in mind from a trauma-informed lens as we teach. And that's not it. I told you this webinar may be a bit dense, but more is included in the statute. It requires that we validate through course material and instruction the importance of honesty with oneself and others, respect for each other's person's dignity and well-being, and responsibility of one's actions. Instruction and curriculum must assist students in development and practice of effective communication skills, the development of self-esteem, and the ability to resist peer pressure. It also encourages family communication and involvement to help students learn and to make responsible decisions. So again, the component of engaging with parents is really fundamental to the law and rule. All right, so the rule, the Oregon Administrative Rule 581.22/2050, is the rule that ODE has created to clarify the statute and give specific guidelines on how to implement the statute. It's a piece of law that gets specific about what sex ed needs to cover to be part of students' well-rounded education. Remember what I discussed earlier about agencies using OARs to get specific about how the implementation of the statute would look like? This is where the terms are defined and the law gets more specific about what sex ed should include, how it should be delivered, for whom, and when. So the first thing that's included in the OAR, if you were to look at it, are definitions. I'm just teasing out a few of them. There's actually a lot more detail in the OAR itself, and there are a lot more of these key terms to go through, so I encourage all of you to read this very closely. But these are just a few. So age appropriate, according to the rule, means curricula designed to teach concepts, information, and skills based on the social, cognitive, emotional experience and development level of students. Best practice means practice curriculum that is based in proven theory and practices. The comprehensive plan of instruction that's referred to means a K-12 programs that emphasize abstinence, but not to the exclusion of condom and contraceptive skills-based education. Opportunities are provided for young people to develop and understand their values, attitudes, beliefs, and decisions about sexuality. So in the rule as well, it describes how this happens and when. So school districts must have a comprehensive plan of instruction that outlines how education and when sexuality education is taught throughout a K-12 education. So every year, there must be 4 sessions that go through these topics throughout primary and secondary education. So this is, again, where it gets a bit more specific about when and how this all goes down. The comprehensive plan of instruction provides that age-appropriate comprehensive plans of instruction focus on these content areas, right? HIV/AIDS and sexually transmitted infections, disease prevention, and that all of this, again, is part of the health education, the integral part of health education, as well as other subjects. So this can also be woven throughout other subjects, and we know that this is such a cross-cutting topic and area that may be an easier way to also kind of condense and bulk a lot of these topics together. Course material and instruction for all human sexuality education courses should discuss human sexuality, again, as a normal and healthy part of human development. A plan of instruction should encourage positive family communication and involvement, teach that consent is an essential component of healthy sexual behavior, and teach students how to identify and respond to attitudes and behaviors which contribute to sexual violence. And more. The and more here, just as a reminder that there is a lot more in the actual rule that really administrators and school staff who teach this directly should really become familiar with all the components that are required. So we know that Oregon is a local control state, meaning that it's really up to the school district and their community to implement these rules in a way that makes sense in their own context. We'll talk more about that and give tips and strategies in future webinars, so we encourage you to tune into those. But in the rule, it really does specify that we encourage parents, teachers, school administrators, local health department staff, and other community representatives and people from the medical community who are knowledgeable about the latest scientific information to play a role in developing this comprehensive plan of instruction. Local school boards shall also approve the plan and review it, update it biannually, in accordance with new scientific information and effective education strategies. And yes, parents also should be a part of the process. Parent engagement is key. Like I said, educators only play one piece of the puzzle in this process to really equip students to be healthy and happy. And so parents are needed really to be engaged in this process and throughout. Parental notification is also required by law or for legal guardians. Parental notification is required for all components of the comprehensive plan of instruction. So anything that's there needs to be notified. Parents can choose to opt their children out if they would like of any of those sections. But again, tune in to next month's webinar when we'll go into that topic area in much more depth. We'll talk about parent engagement and best practices for that and some strategies and tips, as well as more about the law and policy regarding parental notification and opt-out. So other important laws that set the foundation for how we do sex ed in Oregon include the Healthy Teen Relationships Act of 2013 and the Child Sex Abuse Prevention Law of 2015. These two laws are folded into the rules that I went over a little while ago. So if your school district has a comprehensive plan of instruction that we just went over, then they are also fulfilling the education components of these two laws. However, these two laws do also include provisions for staff trainings and the development of school district policies that focus on preventing sexual violence and abuse. So those need to be addressed as well. So these two laws focus on preventing sexual violence and preventing and promoting healthy relationships. Erin's Law, which we also refer to as the Child Abuse Prevention Instruction Law that I just referred to in the past slide. Erin's Law passed it in 2015, which requires schools to have a policy in place that works towards child abuse prevention and instruction through kindergarten through 12th grade, 4 sessions a year. We'll have a whole session, a whole future webinar based on this topic, so stay tuned to that as well. But just a brief little spoiler alert, we do know that covering the new health education standards does mean that you are complying with Erin's Law, right? These aren't separate things. The sexual health components of the health education standards do cover these child abuse prevention components that we are encouraging and requiring in the Child Abuse Prevention Law of Erin's Law. So, just a recap, these are the 3 fundamental laws that I've referred to. The Healthy Teen Relationships Act that requires that each school district shall adopt a policy that establishes procedures for school employees to respond to incidents of teen dating violence. And it incorporates age-appropriate education on teen dating violence into new or existing programs for students in 7th through 12th grades. Erin's Law, also known as the Child Sex Abuse Prevention Law, requires that each school board district adopt a child sexual abuse prevention instructional program for students K through 12, as well as professional trainings for school personnel. And like I mentioned before, it requires a minimum of 4 instructional sessions a year. Human Sexuality Education Law of 2009, as well as the subsequent rule, folds all of these together, right? So each school district shall teach an age-appropriate comprehensive plan of instruction, and that it aligns with the health education standards and performance indicators that have been approved by the state school board. All right, so again, how do we do all of this? The Oregon Health Education Standards are here to help. They help to specify what needs to happen at every grade level, what are these key performance indicators, these key benchmarks that we know that our students are getting this well-rounded education. So Suzanne Hitty is going to give us a background and a summary of the health education standards. Thanks, Suzanne.
Great, Sasha. Thanks so much. So as many of you know, one of the things we're having is a philosophical shift in what we are teaching in our health education classes, and that is that we really want to focus on skill development for lifelong ability to take care of one's health and advocate for oneself and our community members. So the goal of health education is really a definition of health literacy, and this definition comes from SHAPE America, which is the Society for Health and Physical Educators. So the ability to access, understand, appraise, apply, and advocate for health information and services in order to maintain or enhance one's own health and the health of others. That's really the goal of health education. So what we have is that we have laws that help us reach that goal. The State Board of Education under ORS, Oregon Revised Statute 329.045, is Oregon's Educational Act, and this says that the state board shall regularly review and revise rigorous academic content standards in all of the content areas. And what I want people to know is that health education is a required content area under ORS 329.045. So we want to make sure that people know that they should be teaching health education in K-12 settings. So please use that law for advocacy to get health education in our schools. This law also states that the review and revision shall include teachers, other educators, citizens, residents, and shall provide ample opportunity for public comment. And again, the bottom one is that school districts shall offer students instruction, we have a typo there, that meet the academic content standards adopted by the State Board of Education. Okay. So these academic content standards really are all about what students should know, and be able to do by the end of a certain grade band, or grade period. And one of the things we want to do, and what we did with the new academic content standards, is that we really weaved in equity concepts, that we wanted to assure that equity and achievement in health are part of our new standards. So why do we have standards? We have standards to ensure that learning is equitable across the state, so that if you have someone in Bend, Oregon, or Corvallis, or anywhere across our state, we're teaching our students the same content and the same skills to prepare them with lifelong healthy and active habits. We also wanted to ensure, as I mentioned earlier, to include equity and culturally competent practices so that we're addressing the diversity of our students and our communities. The standards used to be put in by benchmarks. Now we have them laid out by specific grade level performance indicators. And again, the focus is on skills. So one of the things we did is we took some foundational documents from members across the state and used these to develop our new standards. And the reason you see physical education here is that we did these in the same year. And usually standards are updated every 7 years on an ODE cycle. So you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, the statewide stakeholder group that updated the standards looked at the national health education standards, they looked at the national sexuality education standards, and they looked at what Oregon already had in place in terms of its standards to make the new standards that we have today. The other thing that the group that revised the standards looked at is, what are the health risks that we are seeing in our communities now, and how can we make that connection between good health and academic success? We know that health risks are out there for our students. We want to prepare them to prevent and reduce some of these health risks that they experience, such as bullying and violence, unintended pregnancy, hunger and malnutrition, inadequate physical activity, physical and emotional abuse, substance use disorders, housing instability. You know, we know all those things impact our students and how well they can perform in school. So what are the tools we can give them to help deal with those situations? So some of the laws that we have in our new standards also, you know, that drove what are in our standards is that we have Oregon administrative rules in Division 21 and 22 that districts assure that they are meeting these through. So OAR 581-021-0200 lays out a standard education for Oregon students, and we went over the ORS, but this is the OAR that accompanies that health education is one of the subject areas that are included as part of a standard education that all K through 12 Oregon students shall be receiving. The other thing, another OAR in Division 22, which is 2010, which actually now has a new number, and I'm sorry, I didn't update the slide in time, but that is actually 2010 was changed to 2030 in the new OARs. That is part of the curriculum. We have prevention about infectious diseases such as HIV and AIDS and hepatitis B and C. We also have laws around the need for prevention in drugs and alcohol, emergency plans, and safety programs. On this slide, you'll see the OAR for prevention, education in drugs and alcohol. And again, those numbers are updated, and we'll send those along. This is now OAR 581-22-2045. And so one of the things we know is that we need to be teaching about prevention education in drugs and alcohol. We also need to be addressing anabolic steroid use and how to prevent that and reduce its use. And that is OAR 581-22-2210. Another law that influences our health education standards came out of Senate Bill 79, which is CPR and AED instruction, that it mandates that for students in grades 7 through 12, each school district must provide instruction in cardiopulmonary resuscitation and the use of automated external defibrillators. It must also include hands-on practicing of CPR, and those can be, the instructional materials can be developed by the American Heart Association, the American Red Cross, or another reputable organization. Okay, so now we're at the new health education standards. This is the first time that sexual health was incorporated into the health education standards. The new health ed standards were adopted by the State Board of Education in December of 2016. And as I stated earlier, we had a lot of folks involved from across the state, stakeholders that gave us their input. We also put out for public comment and got many responses and feedback on the development of the new standards. And we have new criteria that was also adopted by the State Board in January of 2017. So what we want to make sure that people know is that now the new standards have been adopted, and this is the first school year that these new standards should be implemented. So you should be using these right now. We hope you are. Okay, so just to go over the standards, again, standards are what students are expected to know and be able to do at a specific grade level. In this case, to be what we consider health literate. So we have 8 what we call anchor standards, and those are very broad. And then we have within each grade level performance indicators, which are very specific to the developmental needs of the students in those grades. If you take a look at the broad 8 anchor statements, you'll see that Standard 1 really focuses on concepts related to health promotion and disease prevention to enhance health. So that Standard 1 is where you're going to have your comprehensive concepts. Those could be considered your units that you are going to cover. We already said that some of those included the need for sexual health education, prevention in drugs and alcohol, anabolic steroids, safety and first aid, So those are embedded into some of the standards that you'll see. If you look at standards 2 through 8, you'll notice that these are really skills. And so we have standard 2, analyzing the influence of family, peers, culture, media, technology, and other factors on health behaviors. Okay, that's an analyzing skill of influences. Then standard 3 through 8, students are to demonstrate their ability to, number 3, access valid information, products, and services. 4, use interpersonal communication skills to enhance health or avoid or reduce health risks. 5 is the ability to use decision-making skills to enhance health. 6 is about goal-setting skills to enhance health. 7 is the ability to demonstrate the ability to practice those behaviors and avoid or reduce their health risks. And standard 8 is the ability to advocate for personal, family, and community health. So those, again, are our anchor statements. Then we look at, next, examples of performance indicators. And when you look at the standards on the website, you'll see lots of them broken down using Bloom's taxonomy, depth of knowledge, to go from understanding to applying to discussing. So we follow a pattern. Now, some people really wanted to see how the standards fit into different units. And what I'm here to tell you is that you can do whatever you want with the standards and fit them into whatever units that you are focusing on. Looking at your own community data, you might find that your students have higher risks in some behaviors and health risks than others. I would suggest you map out your units and then look to see which standards you want to use in each of those units. Some of the examples, and we'll put this on the Oregon Education Network site, of how you can break down the standards. I've color-coded the standards into 6 units. So the first one is wellness and health promotion. And this section, it was in the color green, can be used in the majority of topic areas. The next unit I looked at was social emotional learning. Again, this section can be used in any and all topic areas. So your green and your yellow, you can plug those in any unit that you want to cover or are covering. I identified the safety and first aid performance indicators in the blue, nutrition and physical activity indicators in a gray, comprehensive sexual health ed indicators in a magenta, and substance use abuse in a red. I'm not sure if the slide, the next one will show you, but I did want to give you an example of color coding, how we use the color coding standard. Standard 1, they're mainly focused on content required by law, and it's not necessarily a comprehensive list. Other topic content can be covered within the green, the wellness and health promotion and social emotional sections, as well as within other standards. Standards 2 through 8 on skill development can be used in the majority of topic areas. I wanted to point out one example. Nutrition and physical activity specific standards are barely listed under Standard 1, but they can be covered in lots of different indicators in the social emotional learning and the wellness and health promotion in Standard 1, and then lots of them in the skills could be covered in Standards 2 through 8.
All right, so thank you, Suzanne. That was a great background and a ton of information about the health standards. I just wanted to reiterate how really robust and comprehensive they are. For the sexual health piece, these are just a selection of them, and we know that they are quite daunting, I know, just to look at first. There are many of them. There's lots. but they also can be bundled and they can be attainable. You can group things together in a way that really makes sense for the timing that you have, as well as the community context that you're working in.
The other thing I do want to offer is that if you need some samples, to please contact me, and I'd be happy to help you organize the standards by units if that's more helpful. And as we said, we'll send out those color-coded examples for you to access.
Right. And just a little idea of what the sex ed standards look like. You see here the standards are numerated by 1.K.4, and the number or letter in the middle signifies the grade level. So the first two there are for kindergarten, the third bullet is for third grade, and the last one there is for fifth grade. So this is just an idea to understand kind of in general how these are done age appropriately. Again, of course, the instruction and material are up to you, up to the school district, up to the schools. But really, these are the overall benchmarks and objectives from the learning that year. So for instance, in kindergarten, students should be able to name reproductive body parts using proper anatomical terms and stages in the basic growth processes of all people. And this, of course, is a child abuse and sexual violence prevention strategy so that children can actually recognize their different parts, describe what's happening to them in a way that's not stigmatizing or using slang. Also in kindergarten, students should be able to recognize that everyone has the right to say who touches their body, when and how. And then in third grade, they need to recognize people at home, school, or in the community who can provide medically accurate information and or support about healthy sexuality, including sexual orientation and gender identity. In third grade too, recognize sources of support such as parents or other trusted adults, including school staff, and they can also tell if they are experiencing sexual abuse. And then you see it's getting a bit more advanced. In fifth grade, students should be able to discuss potential impacts of power differences, including age, status, or position, as they relate to personal boundaries. So those are just some that I took out, but I encourage all of you to read these very carefully, and we'll provide links after this webinar. But again, the Oregon Educators Network, OEN, has a comprehensive sexuality education site that should help you with all of these resources. This is just another resource that I think is very helpful. It kind of maps out the standards that have to do with sexuality education and sexual violence prevention by grade level and by performance indicator. So you notice the row at the very top shows each grade, so K through high school there. And you see on the left, going down all of those rows, articulate different performance indicators. For example, you see that the ones I just mentioned, right? They recognize that everyone has a right to say who touches their body, when and how, and explain why, and that should be covered in every grade up through high school. So that's just an example. These are also available on the Oregon Educators Network for your reference and use as you plan the scope and sequence of your curriculum.
The other thing I'll mention is this is a great tool for you to show compliance with Erin's Law, that you can look at the ones that go K through 12 and point out that you're going to be covering these as part of your coverage of Erin's Law requirements of 4 sessions per year per grade.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. All right, so you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, all of this stuff, a lot of information, this is a super huge challenge. And we agree that it is a challenge, and for that reason, we're rolling out this series of webinars, as well as many supplemental resources that we will keep on providing in the Oregon Educators Network site. There will be resources there. There will be a discussion forum that I encourage you all to participate in. It's just starting up, so I encourage you all to kind of push that forward and get folks on there and talking and learning from each other out there. And then this webinar series will be posted there as well. So this webinar today, like I said, was quite dry and dense, but we promise the next few, or the next many, next all of them will be much more focused on discussion and engagement with you. And they will be on parent engagement and parent opt-out. That'll be the next one. That will be at the last Friday of the month of September. Teaching consent inside and outside of the classroom will be the topic we go through in October. And teaching for social media literacy, that in the end of November. So that's the schedule for the rest of the calendar year, but we will continue throughout the academic year, so stay tuned for that schedule. Before we close out today, I would love to see if there's anyone who would like to chat in the chat box any questions that we didn't get to today, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. I did want to leave this on a positive note, given that we are giving a lot of support and we are working on it. And I see that we just got a question about PowerPoint. We will post this, the whole webinar, as well as the slides on that Oregon Educators Network site. Any other questions? Let's see. And we will send all of those links and resources that we've referenced to all of the participants who registered on that Google Doc, on that Google form a while ago. So if you put your email address into that registration form, then we will reach out to you with all of the links and resources that we've referenced today. Any other questions? All right, we don't see any coming in right now. So just wanted to throw in a lighthearted little GIF right here. Thank you for all the work that you do. You are really changing the state of health and well-being across the state for all our children and young people and adolescents. So we really appreciate it. Without you, we wouldn't be here. None of us would be healthy and well. So we appreciate all the work that you do. And for any further information, there's our contact information. Please write our names down, write our email addresses down. Our jobs are to support you. So please feel free to reach out. We want to be of assistance as however we can.
And again, the PowerPoint will be posted in the Oregon Education Network Comprehensive Sexual Health folder.
It's its own little group. It's called the Comprehensive Sexuality Education Group, and we'll all keep on doing the learning there, and all the resources will be there. So hope to see you all on that site.
Thank you, and take care.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Muted. Muted. Muted.